Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, for part 3 of the never-ending bead roller fabrication. We've made some gains, we've had some losses, but that's okay. You know why? Because it's a beautiful day outside, almost 50. The water is running off the roof like a river from the melting snow. Just a great day to be breathing air. So, yesterday, I wasted an entire day trying to make the hot rolled 1-inch round stock my buddy gave me. My buddy gave this to me as a kit. He cut the important part is he cut the shape of the bead roller, such that it is, and he gave me the strapping that I'm not going to use, and then he made his out of this material, and hot rolled steel has mill scale on it, that gray looking stuff, and some rust. So determined yesterday, and I guess I'd started on the last video, just trying to come up with a way, so I would focus on the ends, machine what had to be machined. There's an 1.5 inch on the end that has to be 22 millimeter, an M10 1.5 threaded hole in the end to hold the die on. This area here needs to be polished enough that the bushings fit. It wasn't that the bushings needed to be hones, it was the shaft was too big still, so I did that. I'd focus on each end. On the business end, the gear end, I reduced for the coupler, the drive coupler that's going to drive the lower shaft. And again, focused on polishing here. But what to do with the middle of it? The middle of it's still too big. So after getting both ends correct, I cut the entire length of the shaft, cutting off the mill scale, enough so it was slightly undersized so you could pass it all the way through the machine if you had to. When I assemble it, I'm going to set the shafts in the body, set the ends on, and I don't have to shove the shaft all the way through, but someday I might want to get the shafts out. And if from here to here was too big, well, that's going to be a physical impossibility. So long story short, which, well, you know how that goes, this shaft was usable. This was the second one I did, and it was fine. The first one I could tell when I had it in the lathe, it had a pretty good whip in it. It's like somebody used it as a pry bar or something. You won't be able to see it with the naked eye, but it's been hit right there. So something has happened to it in its life. And I marked it where the high spot was and was trying to beat on it with a hammer between a couple blocks. But when I put it through these blocks with the bushings, it would spin, but the die itself would wobble. So it's bent even out on the end here. So I gave up. This was about 5 o'clock last night. I said, you know what? I got to go to plan B. My buddy has more hot rolled. He couldn't give me another piece. I could have worked a whole nother day on it. He offered. He says, I got more of that shafting stuff. Well, I let the world take a turn. This morning I'm eating my muffin, 7:30. And my buddy Charlie calls from New Hampshire and says, hey, I'm cutting your stock. I told him, he asked me the night before what size it was. And I told him, ultimately, I would make each of these an inch longer. In the end, I end up making them both 50 inches. One of these is 48 and 49, because when I received it, one of them was already cut 48, and that was just barely enough. And now, with the exception of machining just a tiny bit off for the drive coupler, it's slightly under 1 inch. Both shafts are the same. Oh, I didn't finish my story. He says, I'm cutting your stock. Come get it. So I hopped right in my car, drove to New Hampshire, shot the breeze with him for a while, threw the shaft in, drove back home, actually went beyond my road, went down to see a buddy of mine, look at a Model A that he picked up, and I was back at my house at 10 o'clock. I had to stop at the post office too, to mail a box to my wife. So that was a productive morning, and I got right to work. And by lunchtime, I had one shaft done already because I'm already familiar with all the machining processes, and I have all the tools and everything. You know, every time when you do something the second time, it always goes easier, and having the nice material, it sure did make it a lot easier. This I buffed to a high luster using my bushings as the guide. They're the tightest piece I had. I have bored the gears from 3/4 to 1 inch. I wasn't sure how I was going to bore the gears themselves, but I ended up drilling them. I have a brand new set of drill bits, and I snuck up on 1 inch, and I went just a little ways in just to test it, and it felt nice and tight, and it is. It's perfect. So I went ahead and drilled them to 1 inch, and then drilled and tapped them both for a 5/16 course set screw. So they're fine, kind of. And then to make sure I could pass the shafts through the bushings when everything's welded in, I polished the entire length of them with emery paper, and now the bushing block will slide from one end to the other. So they're straight, they're machined almost. All I have left to do now is I assembled it the way it is, what you see, and I wanted to line my set screws up. You can't get them both perfectly straight up and down because the gears have to mesh. And then I've got them all tightened so they're marking the shaft, making a little imprint, and then I will machine a flat exactly so they're lined up this way, so when you go to take the bead roller dies off, you know, they're not one's facing the other one. You got to rotate it around twice. I like to rotate it around so I can get to both of them and go ahead and swap the dies when you do that. So I need to just disassemble it to do that, but I noticed a problem. The gears are advertised as 2 inches on center. That's where they're supposed to run, and the way the gears are cut, they have like a pressure angle, 14.5 degree pressure angle when they engage. And I can tell you with the block I made, I marked it 2 inch, bored it, all that stuff. I've got a couple hours in this block. I hate to make another one. I don't want to make another one. But I can put the gears together in mesh and slide them on the shaft, but it's tight. I mean, I can't freely rotate this right now. I haven't put a lot of force on it yet, but my instincts tell me it's wrong. The gears need to spread out a little bit. So I have to remove the shafts anyway. So I'm going to drive out the bushings, saw the block in half, spread her open a little bit and weld it back up, grind it down. You'll never know if I didn't tell you anything happened, but I'm going to give myself, I should be able to freely spin this, and continuing at this point is going to be a mistake. I feel it in my heart. So the gears are just too tight. But hey, if I was to do it again, I'd know to do a little bit more than 2 inch. But some things you think would be precision, but the gears themselves are, well, they're well made. You know, if it had a 100 horsepower motor behind it, they'd probably break in a hurry. Something would. But until I can freely spin it, I am not going to continue. So that's that for the shafts. But I've made good progress today. It's only 2:30 or so. So I also went out to my van down by the river, and I had 6 feet of square tubing. When my buddy Charlie was here yesterday, he brought me a piece of brisket. Thank you for that. We were talking about the flex and everything, and I showed him the strapping I was going to put in there. He says, geez, you ought to put some 2-inch box tubing in there. That's a good idea. On the bottom of the throat, you know, when you're looking at the bead roller and running metal through it, most people, when they make them, the one that I saw that Kyle from Make It Custom did, he put his support, only one, and then he wrapped the outside, but he put it on this side of the shafts. And his throat is open. You're looking right at the shaft, which is not a big deal, but I think it would be nicer if it had a shelf so nothing would catch on it. So I cut that 6-foot piece in half, and now I'm going to weld the piece back on, because I'm going to go from the block with the shaft running inside it, and the top of it will be exactly on the top of my throat on the bottom, so when the bead roll is in normal position, it's going to look like it's one piece. And that's certainly going to take a lot of flex out of it. So I'm going to add from here to the block back onto this piece. No big deal. That's what welders are for. And the second one, even I well, even I deemed overkill. I was gonna put, you know, another 1/4 inch piece here. I know I'm crazy. Like that, and then the 3/16 on the outside. I'm building a battleship here. Even I determined that having this box tubing in here is probably a waste. Plus, I'm going to cut a piece out to add to this, which makes more sense. So, bear with me. I promise you, when I'm done, it won't flex. I may need a crane to pick it up, but that's okay. So this piece is not going to be used. I am going to run this support here, maybe from the block all the way up, just like that one. And then I'll be wrapping the outside. So it's pretty much going to look like this. I think I'm going to run the box tubing, this piece of 1/4 inch, wrap the outside. These are going to go all the way up. I'm going to extend this to go all the way to the front too. This piece of 1/4 inch. And if it flexes in, to heck with it. I gave up. So I got a little more work to cut out for me today. I got to finish machining my shafts. I'm just going to put them in the mill and cut a flat for the set screws. Now that I've marked where the set screws are. I could just touch the end mill down and make an indentation, which I might. On the bead roller end, you don't know where the set screw is on the different bead rollers, so that 1.5 inches has to have a flat all the way across it. So I'll cut that and continue on. I did mess around last night. I hooked up my hydraulic metal brake and I bent these pieces here, which nicely box this in. And when I weld these pieces on, that piece will slide in. I'm only going to weld this maybe 4 1/2-inch welds. So this block could be serviced at some point. It's not going to go anywhere. It's fully encased, and its attachment to the bead roller isn't super structural. So 4 small welds will certainly hold it. Same with the front lower. My buddy did make 4 holes in the front of the bead roller body. I don't know if you can see that one over there, but I'm going to, well, in interest of being thorough, because that's what I do. He added these holes here so I can spot weld my front block. And I already welded the adjuster for the front upper shaft on, and I did it with the bushing in place in the block, and I actually just wet a paper towel, stuck it in the bushing, and I welded a little bit. When I heard it start to sizzle, I quit. And I was done welding anyway. So same thing when I weld these, I will, go slow. I can wait, let it cool down, blow it off, whatever. And speaking of blowing it off, when I was cutting the blocks the other day in the mill, I used the cool tube, the blue thing behind me. In my little video, I'm going to add the clip right at the end. I forgot to put it in the other day. The thing's amazing. It makes frost. I'd only used it in short bursts, if you will, when he gave it to me a few months ago. Notching tubing, I can notch a piece of tubing in 30 to 40 seconds, so it never got a chance to really show me what that thing is capable of. It's blowing frost from shop air, which is warm. The compressor ran over and over, so that was probably warm air, and it's blowing frost. So that's pretty incredible. I out-talked it again. That was just the mailman driving by. So my shop, this particular area of my shop is almost uninhabitable. I can't wait to at least get something put together enough I can get it off the bench. Like having the stand material here is kind of a waste, but I have to build that. I thought I'd be done by now. Remember the other day I said that, when you start a project, it's going to take 2 or 3 times longer than you think it will. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Yeah, it's going to take 2 or 3 times longer. You're going to run into all kinds of unforeseen problems, and you have to use your senses. It's no different than building transmissions or engines. If it feels wrong, looks wrong, if your gut tells you it's wrong, you got to fix it before you continue. And this is no different. Doing it a second time, I'll be an expert, and I'm hoping to pass some information and maybe prevent you, if you decide to tackle this particular project, from having the same problems. So the answer for the shafts is buy 1018 cold rolled steel. Do not buy hot rolled, which what my buddy bought. Hot rolled has the mill scale on it. Cold rolled did not. It took very little polishing and it looks professional. So continuing with these was definitely a mistake. Wasting an entire day, that was just being stubborn and trying to use what I had. So if I was smart, hindsight once again is perfectly clear, I would have stopped immediately, or not even started. I would have looked at this and said, my gut did say, boy, that's crap. I don't want to use that. But hey, here we are, and I'll catch you in a couple days. 1018 cold rolled steel polishes to a high luster. Slowly boring the holes, I swapped from lubrication to this cold air gun my buddy Charlie gave me. That's frost. It just takes shop air, you direct it at your hole, and it's blowing air so cold it's making frost. Unbelievable. That's the label for those that are going to ask. Remember that 1 hour estimate from yesterday to bore the rest of the holes for the oil light bushings for the shafts? Well, times 3. But I got it. I cleaned this mess up a few times. I finally had to uncover and turn on the exhaust fan that I installed when I built the garage. Finally got a use for it.